And it listened to me. It walked out of the thicket. It turned around and looked at me.
They looked up, and in this tree, there was a monkey man. And the monkey man jumped down out of the tree and started running away.
And suddenly they're right in front of the car. He slams on the brakes and manages to stop. And he's skidding because it's like quite, gravelly. And literally for about a second and a half, they just stood there because they don't know where to go. And you can tell they're panicking. They're like roof flapping. And their face is like twitching.
Welcome back to Bigfoot Society, a podcast where we focus on cryptids, the strange, and the unexplained of this world. If you've got a story or something weird to share, send an email over to me at bigfootsociety@gmail.com. And if you'd like to support this show, head on over to patreon.com/the Bigfoot Society. And now, on with the show.
All right, Bigfoot Society, we've got the privilege of having Mr. Rich Turgeon on today. Rich is one of those people you may not have heard of, or maybe you have. Rich, I'm going to spend a few minutes just kind of sharing how I ran into you on the internet. I believe I was on YouTube, and I was looking for something Michael Freeman related. And your interview with Michael Freeman, of course, the son of Paul Freeman, came up, and I was like, whoa, who's this dude? And I was watching it, and you don't have a lot of interviews out there, but all your interviews are solid, and they're, great interviews. You got Michael Freeman, you got Russ Accord, Ron Moorhead as well.
Correct.
He's on there. Good stuff.
Yep.
So I started looking a little bit more into you, and actually, I'm in a group of some Bigfooters, that group text, and we were like, who's this dude? We're trying to figure out who's this Rich guy. And everything we were seeing was good stuff. And I was like, oh, man, he's like a creative dude. I got to talk to this guy. So, Rich, you're a creative guy that's into Bigfoot, and you're putting out a lot of really cool stuff that not maybe a ton of people know about yet. And I want to shine the light on what you're doing. Is there anything else that the audience needs to know about you before we get chatting?
No, I appreciate that. And, part of your story about how you kind of stumbled upon me has been a really just part of kind of this journey of becoming more into the community, I guess. I've been into paranormal stuff and Bigfoot my whole life, and from childhood, and then it goes in phases as an adult, and it never goes away. But it's only until that Freeman video went up, which got views beyond my wildest dreams. And I can, I can talk a little bit about how that came about. But, part of it is just, wow, this is like talking to people that I've been following for a long time, or, newer folks in the community. So it's been a real privilege that people have even said yes to me wanting to talk to them. I'd like to do more of those interviews. But anyway, aside from my Bigfoot interview series on my YouTube channel, which is most relevant to this topic, yes, I'm a musician, like you said. All my stuff is online. What else can I say? I'm a screenwriter. I had a screenplay optioned about a year and a half ago. We're still trying to get that set up. I'm actually currently working slowly on a Bigfoot themed screenplay, a new one. I'm a creative director that's my day job, and I work at a global digital advertising agency. I've been doing that for over 20 years. So that's been my career after my early 20s, where it was all, and mid 20s, it was all about music, doing that all the time. I'm also an illustrator, and all of these things are kind of connected in a weird way. They they play into my Bigfoot interest and, I guess, involvement in the community so far. So it's all tied together. I'm just a guy, creative guy, and creative professional. I'm a dad of 2 kids. I live in Marin County, California. And just super humbled to be talking to you and appreciate the conversation that we're about to have.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I was glad that you agreed to come on. So I always like, we'll start at the beginning. And I'm curious, what is it that, most people are introduced to Bigfoot maybe as a younger kid through something. What was it that sparked your interest in that cryptid?
That's a great question. I'm a child of the 70s, so
Okay.
it was probably like a blip here, blip there. But, I would say the very first memory I have of anything Bigfoot was my dad took me to a matinee, and it was that movie Sasquatch, with the silhouette. He's like silhouetted against the woods and all that. And that was the Abe Canyon encounter was a big part of that movie. And it made, it was like a monster movie for kids. And that just sparked this kind of lifelong fascination with it. I checked out the same books in the library over and over again about the topic. There were probably like 6 to 8 of them. There were these pioneering researchers like John Green, I think. But I was also, as a kid, more interested in the picture books and kind of the eyewitness accounts because they were so frightening and sort of like, wow, like I spent all my time in the woods. Like, I wonder if this thing is out there. It just sparks your childhood imagination. And I've always loved nature and wildlife. But I would say that movie might have been one of the first kind of, things that really sparked interest, along with then it was like the $6 Million Man.
Right. Yeah. The Bigfoot in there. Stuff. Exactly. Classic.
But even as a kid, I wanted to know more. It wasn't just about, oh, I'm entertained by this monster thing. Like, what is this? Oh, wow, it's real. And it went on to, reading actual books about the subject as early as I'd say like 9-10 years old,
That remind me, did you grow up then on the West Coast as well?
No, I moved here about close to 20 years ago now. I'm from the East Coast originally, the Philadelphia area, and even an hour outside of that. Yeah, I grew up in a very rural town, Douglasville. There's Monocacy Hill was right across the street from us, literally, and that was kind of my playground. But a lot of my childhood friends had a few had acres of property. And we would just get lost exploring the creeks and in the woods for the day, the entire day till sundown. So that was like a really big part of my childhood. That and getting poison ivy. It's just spending so much time in nature.
That's funny.
Yeah.
Oh man, yeah. Pennsylvania is such a wild place. There's a lot of Bigfoot action in there as well, as you probably are aware.
Oh, yeah.
So was it a thing, myself, my story, and I've heard this story repeated where it's like you're into Bigfoot as a little kid, you kind of during high school you're like, whatevs, and then something snaps and you remember you're a weird person and you come back to it. Is it kind of like that, or how did that go about?
That is so well said. I mean, you're probably the first person I've ever talked to, believe it or not, that put it that way, because it really is that way. It's this weird subconscious itch or something, and that's exactly what's happened to me since childhood, where it's like, high school, it's just like I don't know how much I thought about it, not too much, but then on and off, in college, I visited Western Pennsylvania, the Chestnut Ridge, and Stan Gordon has documented all of that wave of sightings in Silent Invasion. So I actually explored. That was my first Squatchin trip. I took a friend who was not necessarily a believer, but also into the outdoors. And I'm trying to think of that I did that in my early 20s or my mid 20s. Actually, no, that trip would have been when I was about 30. And then a few years before that, I'm trying to connect all these like ups and downs. A few years before that, when I was about 26, I wrote this Bigfoot themed screenplay that I'm actually like revising now. And I got super academic about it again, all over again. As an adult, that was like a rediscovery for me, because I was like, all this time has passed. There's more books out now. People like Grover Krantz and I'm forgetting somebody else that I don't think it was Jeffrey Meldrum, but just like some other experts in academia were stepping forward and writing books about this, which I don't remember happening as a child. And grew this little library of Bigfoot books. And then it was like, I moved to California, and it's just really part of the culture out here, especially the farther you go north. And it reignited this interest in me. And I do want to mention a really big bump in that interest was there's a Facebook page called Facebook Finding Bigfoot. And my friend Tom, who was my partner in crime on all my past 10 years of doing an annual, field expedition, we're not like what I would call serious researchers on the field, but it's like, we'll go to hot spots, we'll go to famous locations. But he turned me onto this site, and I was visiting him in Los Angeles, and he was showing me these videos that this Facebook page would post. I don't know if you remember that Facebook page or you're familiar, but like,
I've actually not familiar with it.
So they posted a series of really, I thought, were excellent videos. This was probably 10 years ago, that would break down footage, like the Freeman footage, Patterson Gimlin footage, Marble Mountains footage, and break down like consistencies in the anatomy, in the morphology, in the footprints, in behaviors. So they would break down certain eyewitness counts. And it was really like before YouTube caught fire and before anybody was really aggregating or analyzing this sort of stuff on the internet. And my mind was blown, because I was like, God, they're right. Like they're really connecting the dots in a way that nobody I had seen up until that time had been doing. And I thought their videos were great. I thought they were very credible. I thought the way that they analyzed things was awesome. Unfortunately, they were apparently hoaxed by Rick Dyer when he had that dummy making the rounds. And they publicly bought into Rick's dummy and story. And like, I think they were so ashamed that they shut down the page.
Oh, wow.
They went into hiding, and they had never revealed, to my knowledge, their real identities, and they had never resurfaced that page or all of that work that they had done. And I thought it was a shame, because they were doing some really great work and turning new, people onto the research probably that normally wouldn't have been exposed to it. They also self-published a book about they were a very flesh and blood camp, as we call it, but they also published a book about Bigfoot evolution and how it was like the missing link from a very Darwinian perspective. And I remember at the time not totally buying into that and thinking, but it's still cool that they're putting out a book about this and theorizing. So I don't know what became of them, but that was a very big bump and rekindling my interest in this topic and making it that interest pretty consistently. That fire's been kind of alive. I mean, I'm not on this 24/7, but like since then, I would say that, and my, like I said, when you have a friend, I think to take trips with and talk about this stuff with, it's like almost like having a support group. I'm sure you're familiar with that concept.
Oh, definitely. I agree 100%. It sounds like, do you think someday we might get to see more of this screenplay that you're trying to revitalize? Or
yeah, absolutely. It will get done.
Oh wow.
It's a matter of I think I need to be more focused and consistent on it, because like I have 2 kids, I've got a day job, and while I'm able to, it's screenplay takes about 8 months, I think, for me. And if I were working on it full time, it would be closer to, maybe 2 or 3, which is a standard film industry deadline. I'm writing speculatively, meaning I'm not on assignment. I'm writing it for myself with the hopes of getting a film set up. That's what we're trying to do with this other non-Bigfoot related script, one of 7 that I've written over time.
Oh, wow.
But yeah, I would love to share it. And it's one of those things where it's like, you know what, I might even share it when I'm done writing it with the community, just to kind of crowdsource feedback get people's opinions and entertain them before it becomes a 40-50 million dollar movie. Knock on wood. That's like playing the lottery,
Right.
That's always the hope, right? But
Oh, that's cool. Well, I wish the best for you with that, and man, that would be cool. Who knows? In the future, it'll be something big, and people can come back to this, your interviews and watch this interview, and that'd be kind of cool. You mentioned you have a pretty good what's in your Bigfoot book collection?
so it's back there behind me. I know some people have much more extensive libraries dedicated to this topic, and it's certainly what I have in terms of physical copies right now. It wouldn't be a fraction of what I've read in a lifetime. I've probably read 10, I don't know, maybe tens of thousands of eyewitness accounts since I was a kid. I have books from David Paulides, his Missing 411 and Hoopa area research, tribal Bigfoot, etc. I thought that was some really interesting, great work. I recently finished Monsterland, a digital copy of that by Ronnie LeBlanc of Expedition Bigfoot. I've read Michael Freeman's book, which I thought was excellent as well. A very different kind of experience and book. There's multimedia in it. And, he talks about that in my interview with him on YouTube. I'm just going off recent history. I'm taking a peek back here to see what else I have. Stan Gordon's book, Silent Invasion, about the Western PA things that happened, the wave of UFO sightings and Bigfoot sightings in the 70s. Lauren Coleman's book. I could go on.
That's awesome.
There's a number of digital and in print.
Oh yeah, exactly. I just picked up Know the Sasquatch by Chris Murphy on Kindle, just because you can search it quickly. But man, everyone needs a copy of that book. My goodness, I don't know if you've ever read it. It is so good.
I'm gonna write that down. Know the Sasquatch.
Remember
I'm
those
always
old,
open to reading good ones about
those
this,
DK eyewitness books from when we were younger, and they had all the pictures and stuff. And it's imagine that, but for Bigfoot and like all the Bigfoot history. And it's like Bigfoot history from way back. You got the Native American stuff all the way up to the Snell Grove Lake incident from Monster Quest. It's got all the history in there. So you gotta check it out. It's so good.
And what was the DK book series from our childhoods?
Oh, just an example I was trying to use. Just imagine a book that's really like has a lot of pictures and is super detailed, and that's what Know the Sasquatch is. So
super cool. That sounds great.
Yeah. Good stuff. Good stuff. Yeah, and you're in a perfect area out. I mean, from what I've heard, I've talked to a few guys, and they're like, yeah, you go to estate sales out here, yard sales, you find all sorts of Bigfoot books, and you could. This one dude I talked to, he was like, I've got like 4 copies of Patterson's book from estate sales. I'm like, you lucky son of a gun.
That's funny.
But anyways, you have a really interesting blog that I was able to read through, and it sounds like you may even have more adventures. You call out 2 of them in the blog. Well, let's talk about one of them first. Let's talk about, you've actually been to Bluff Creek.
Yes.
Tell me about, that's not a place I've been able to go to yet. And it's kind of, one of the mecca sites for Bigfooters, but it's extremely hard to get there unless you have some sort of connection or information source. So I'd be really curious about how that journey went for you.
Yeah, it was a journey, literally and figuratively. And we didn't get there until our 3rd attempt, actually. But
wow.
And our second trip out there, the first trip, first of all, Hoopa is very remote. It's a very, very small town. That's what would be, I guess, the nearest town to that site. Then you have to travel at least, I'm going off memory. I think what I'm saying is accurate. I think you have to travel like 20 to 30 minutes to Orleans, which isn't, I don't even know. It's a town on the map, but it's really like there's a couple of buildings there. I'm sure there's other residents, tucked in the woods or whatever, but like you're really out there. And Hoopa, to my understanding, is a lot of Indian, Native American reservation land. And it's not the kind of place that you can just kind of wander off. We were warned by the one hotel that's there. The proprietor at the time was like, don't just like kind of wander off around here because of the pot growers, and some of it is off limits and all this other stuff. So our destination for the Bluff Creek Patterson Gimlet site was Six Rivers National Forest. I give you that sort of like, that was our home base where we stayed. We didn't plan on overnights. We don't do overnights. I've done them before, but our focus is kind of like long day excursions. And our first trip out there, I think we were struck by like how really far out there you are, all the way in Northern California. And it's just not, it's not your typical trailhead kind of experience, trail markers, all that stuff. So we got directions. I think it was online from some, Bigfoot organization at the time. And we end up driving, it's like 30 miles up a mountain to get to the logging roads. We didn't see a soul. It's all mountain driving. We saw a bear cub. A bear cub just kind of walks in front of the car. We didn't tell anybody. And this is when I wasn't really experienced. I was a very experienced hiker, but not as experienced. It's sort of like, hey, you got to prepare well because it's nature against you, and not to be dramatic, but you want to be prepared. We didn't even tell anybody where we were going that day. And so as we're losing some light, because it's getting later in the day, I'm realizing how far out we really are. We're not seeing any car or cars. I said to my friend, I don't know if this is such a great idea. And he is not as experienced a hiker as I am. And I think he was kind of taking it lightly. And I was like, we should turn around and do this right. So the next day we got as far as logging roads, and we're in a Saab convertible, right? And it's it's not the car for this.
No, it's not.
I don't know what kind of elevation we're up there, but like you fall off the road or something goes weird with your car, it's like there's nothing that's going to stop you, and you're hundreds of feet up. So I'm not afraid of the remoteness. Really, it's more the what could go wrongs that I'm kind of calculating even on day 2. So we got about 6 miles away from, based on logging road markers, we got about 6 miles away from the site, but we had to call it again because we were like, can we cover 12 miles plus? And how dark is it going to be by that point? I mean, we set out early. So that was like, we didn't make it to the site really in our first foray out there. It was only, my blog post talks about when we did make it out there, but by then I knew enough, and we had done more of these kinds of trips. We rented a Jeep Wrangler. I had a spare tank of gas. I had enough water and food for 3 days, and not like, a giant cooler. I'm talking about just like enough trail mix that if somebody hurts their ankle or something and one of us needs to walk back, or something goes wrong with the car, one of us needs to walk back. So I know it sounds kind of ridiculous and maybe over prepared, because I've seen like old people go to this film site, but again, it's just about, it's about enjoying the experience. Like the safety is about enjoying it and kind of making sure that, something like that doesn't happen. Like we had a spare tire, things like that. You just want to have these basic survival things in place. Then you can enjoy it, right? And even on that trip, we had to park our Jeep. Instead of 6 miles this time, I think it was close to 1.5 miles, 2 miles. But there was a log across the overgrown trail that there's no way we were going to lift it. It was an entire tree. And I don't know how many men it would have taken to actually lift it, but we had to disembark from the car at that point and make our way in. And it's actually a beautiful, beautiful area. It's a beautiful spot. The water is this weird blue color that you don't see in creeks very often, but it's just, it was a magical spot. And it really still does feel remote. It's certainly remote enough where you're just kind of like, hey, who knows? Anything could happen. Who am I to, when we take these trips, it's not like we're hoping to see Sasquatch this time. Of course we do, but we take it thinking like, hey, that could happen, but we get an awesome hike out of it, and we can check it off that we visited this site, that kind of thing.
Sure.
So it was super exciting and on the bucket list, and an amazing experience.
So you get to, the place where you had to park the Jeep. Then, so you actually found the filming spot. You had directions to get to the actual filming spot. What was it like when you got to that spot and you're like, wow, you can start to see things. You're starting to pick things out that you see in the footage.
So the instructions we got from some correspondence with a Bigfoot organization, I think it was the Bluff Creek Project or something. I mean, personally,
Bluff Creek Project, yeah.
I prefer the place to remain a bit unspoiled and kind of hard to get to, because that lends to the experience. Maybe that sounds a little selfish, but and there's somebody put like a Bigfoot sticker on one of the logging road markers, and this organization has a logbook down in the creek for people to sign, which I didn't find. Apparently, I was a few feet away from it, but yeah, that's how I found it. It did take some research and correspondence. It's not an easy place to get to, and should probably stay that way. Mm-hmm. It is very, like I said, if you don't know what you're doing, I really wouldn't advise people to just kind of like hop in their VW bug or whatever and try to make a go of it. It's really something that's like, it takes preparation, and you should know what you're doing to go in the woods that far, let alone, driving mountain roads, like logging roads that are that high up and stuff. It's not a risk-free endeavor, I would say.
I would say it's an extremely risky endeavor. And I've talked to a lot of different people that have been there, and the stories I've heard of people popping tires, messing up axles. There's a story of Daniel Perez, how his trailer, he's trying to drag a trailer down there, and the trailer goes off the side of the road, I believe. It may have even caught on fire. You have to listen to his interview on Bigfoot and Beyond. It's an extremely crazy story. You got to check that out. But it is not something to take lightly, going to the Patterson-Gimlin film site. Something I've heard as well is sometimes people that are there, they have just like weird observations, or it's just did you notice, was there anything weird going on there? Or I've heard stories, but I don't know if.
Well, you know how people say, "Oh, this feels squatchy," like on Finding Bigfoot, or this or that feels squatchy. To be honest with you, I think it is extremely remote. Like I said, you just can't hear a pin drop. There's no planes even that seem to cross over the area. That's a great question, because there is a vibe to it, especially that site, because the creek is very active. It's not a dry creek, and just like between the water and the life around it and the density of the woods, you can't really. Every woods is different, and these woods, in my experience, or the way I experienced it, are very dense. You can't kind of see a tree line from that creek. It's so thick that it's like you can see so far through the trees, but after 20, 50 feet, you don't know, like, kind of, I can't see up, I can't see across. I remember calling back to my friend as we're kind of winding our way, bushwhacking a little bit, to find the logbook, and just kind of like, it doesn't, it's not one of those, again, a kind of typical hiking park type of experience. Now, there's some, anyway, getting back to the squatchy aspect of it, I can't say if there's activity there or not anymore. I cannot definitively say that. I will say that there's a bit of a vibe for sure because of the remoteness. It's certainly a prospect with the waterways and the food supply, I would think, in that area. In terms of weird stuff, yes, that's a definitive yes. Some weird, quirky stuff going on there. First of all, there's a picnic table down there, of all places.
There's a bit
by the creek. So it's like, man, we just like, you
gotta get that down there, dude.
30, 40 to 50 miles from like a cell phone tower and, a super tiny town to get here. But there's a picnic table here. Okay. That's odd. I would love to know who put it there. And it's in this nice clearing. It's in this nice clearing that's not a man-made clearing. It's almost like this little mini meadow. And I guess it's to chill out while you're visiting the spot. I don't know. The other quirky things, one of the weirdest thing I've ever seen in the woods happen on the way there on one of the logging roads. This was on our first trip. I have video of this. I'd have to dig it up, but there's a fern-like plant that is just like shaking like this, and there's no wind. And we're both looking at it, and it wouldn't stop. There's leaves all around us, woods all around us. We're on a mountain road. I don't know. I forget the elevation of Six Rivers when you're up there. I want to say anywhere, I don't know, 4,000 to 7,000 foot elevation. But there's this plant just shaking back and forth. Now, I'm a skeptic first.
Okay.
Always a Bigfoot believer, but I'm a skeptic first. I'm very scientifically minded. And I'm like, this can't be wind. And is it a tremor in the earth? It's just a rhythmic tremor that's making this plant literally like my hand is doing. It's just back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. There's no other leaves around us doing this. None. On the trees, on the ground. That was super weird. I'll never forget it. And then the other, and it kept doing it when we walked away. It never stopped.
Really?
Super bizarre. And I'm trying to think of some other quirks about the place, but it does have like a weird vibe. I mean, it's just like it's an odd spot. It's just so far away from anything. I'm sure I'm forgetting stuff that I jotted down in my sort of travel diary or travel notes that stand out. The picnic table definitely was strange. I have to say I didn't see anything else that was sort of like squatchy or and would indicate any presence of anything weird. I don't even think we saw any wildlife on these trips, except for that bear cub I mentioned. We didn't see any deer. We didn't see any bears. We didn't see any mountain lions. I don't even remember seeing a rabbit, honestly. It's that's another kind of weird thing about it. You just don't see, I didn't see on the 3 times I've been in that area, I haven't seen sort of like wildlife, jaunting around the way I normally do in the woods. So I don't know if that's highly unusual, but
it is weird. So you've got video that you took from down on your journeys there. Oh man, that's cool.
I took photos. I don't remember taking video because I don't know why I didn't think to. Sure. I probably should have taken videos when I was down there, but I think some of the stills that I took are on my blog post. I should have taken video and I didn't. I would like to go back to that spot just because it's fun on some level to try to get out there, and it really is a special place. My other observation, I think, from one of your earlier questions about my overall impression was when you're looking at the Patterson-Gimlin film, it looks like a very wide open space.
Sure, yeah, exactly.
Like this looks like a football field of space, and Patty is across that football field or 50 yards, 100 yards away of space. When I was down there, and I had walked quite a bit up and down the creek, because I was like looking for the logbook and like the exact spot, which again, I think I was there. The logbook was what I didn't find.
Okay.
But I didn't, there is none of that feeling of it. It feels very closed in, and meaning it's not this big open area that, you know, you see on the film. It's a pretty tight creek. And if you see aerial photos of that area, it looks like pretty tight as well. Like, hey, there's the bank of the creek, but it's little to nothing, and it winds through very, very deep, thick woods. And that's what I was walking through. In fact, I had a pair of river shoes, like surf shoes.
Oh, sure.
And so just to get around up and down the area, like I had to be in the water, and my friend couldn't do that. So he was kind of bushwhacking on the side, on the banks or whatever. But like, that's how I was getting up and down after the hike into the area. So I think there's probably something to, and there are people who have gone into extremely deep dives on this, like the scale and, oh, this tree was there, it's still there.
Yeah.
And I know why, because I've compared it digitally and all this other, I'm not quite that down the rabbit hole on it. But I would say that I did go to film school, and, you know, being somebody who's into film and shot films and all that other stuff, I think that the camera, I used to own a Super 8 camera as a kid, and I think it probably creates a bit of illusion and a sense of, or an illusion around your depth of field and your sense of perspective. Meaning it looks, I think, and Bob Gimlin would know the answer to this, and Roger Patterson, but like, I think they were a lot closer to Patty than what we see on film. I think that it was like, holy crap, that thing is right across from this relatively not wide creek. You know, a lot of creeks are called creeks in California. They're like, that's a river. That's huge. Okay. This was a creek. This is a creek. Now, in some spots, Bluff Creek, we've seen it in other areas where it does open up and it gets bigger, but not that big, right? And it's dry. It's a dry creek bed, it looks like, in the Patterson Gimlin film. So my impression of the site is that I doubt when you see it, it's going to be like, yeah, it looks like it does not look like the Patterson Gimlin film. And it's not just because the woods change in the past have changed, you know, fairly radically in the last, 60 years or whatever it is since that was shot. Everything's overgrown. The landscape is a bit different. The creek is still there, right?
Oh,
but
yeah.
what that did make an impression on me. Like, I thought it would be this big, wide open space like you see in that film, and it doesn't look that way. And I think, like I said, part of that is due to how the camera flattens things or deepens things, whatever you want to call it. It changes perspective a little bit. So when I hear about Bob Gimlin, when I hear him talk about the experience or read about their experience or whatever, or even just like their estimates of how far away Patty was from them, I think that they had a much more sort of immediate, visceral kind of, holy crap, like we kind of surprised this thing, and it surprised us. It's right there, like, get your camera, and he's running after it and all this other stuff. I think it happened so fast, but that they were closer than it looks to us.
It's you know,
correct me if I'm wrong, internet.
Yeah, and don't worry, they will. And they'll be correcting me as well, which I hope they do. Yeah, it's a great thing about the Bigfoot community is there's a lot of smart people, and they will let you know. That's just fascinating talking. I love talking to people that have been to places like Bluff Creek. So you're going to, you know, it sounds like you're going different places every year. When you're going to look for Bigfoot, the question is, what are you expecting to see? Or in your mind, what is Bigfoot?
Great question. Another great question. I keep my eyes and ears open. I think it's really important and taken for granted. And if you're not experienced, I wouldn't even say seasoned at, quote, Bigfooting, you know, whatever that means to people. I think if you are more experienced at being in the outdoors, and using your powers of observation that everybody has in the context of nature. That's kind of what I'm keeping those senses on. So what I'm looking for, it's not just visual, right? It's like that, even that term suggests visual. Now, we're primarily visual creatures. These are attached to our brains.
Mm-hmm.
These two input units, whatever you want to call them. But if you're not looking, you're going to miss something. If you're not looking a little harder than just like taking a stroll through the woods and not paying attention, you will miss something. And I know this from eyewitness accounts. I know this from aggregated accounts of Bigfoot behavior. And I don't pretend to know. I talk to Bigfoot psychically or anything crazy like woo-woo like that, but they know, they are way better than us. From everything I do know, they are way better than us, far superior to us in terms of sneaking around and deception. Whether we're talking about their more sort of down to earth sort of physical skills, or we're talking on that end of the spectrum that gets into clairvoyance and throwing voices and acting in concert as a team or a pack, whatever you want to call it, mimicking animal sounds, presenting little gifts or sort of weird signs out there. So it's like we know they do these strange things that are just high strangeness. We know that. But if you're not looking, and I'm only talking about one sense right now, you will miss stuff. So I try to like, and my friend knows this that I hike with, but like I do try to keep my eyes open. I look around, especially on the ridges, not just in front of me and not just kind of on the side, but really like stop for a little bit. Take a look around on the ridges, take a look around, listen, and just pay attention to what's going on out there. And I can tell that's actually, netted some interesting things. So when I was in the Marble Mountains wilderness area, for example, I would say about 50 yards away from me, way off the trail and deep in the woods, I saw, and we were bushwhacking it to get across the creek because we couldn't get across on the trail. I saw two deer that were clearly startled by something, and they were like, whipping their heads around, trotting away from something and stopping. Like, did we get away from that? Like, what the hell is that?
Wow.
Now, I grew up with deer all over the place. Even when I lived in Center City, Philadelphia, there was a deer overpopulation problem in Fairmount Park. I don't see deer spooked like that. I've never seen deer spooked like that, let alone two of them at a time. Of course, we see deer travel together, but like that was weird. That was unusual to me. I'm not attributing it to Bigfoot. I'm not going to do that and make that leap. But if I hadn't been keeping my eyes open for like what's beyond my feet and my immediate concerns of not, tripping into the creek or whatever, which was several feet below, I would have seen that sight. And that actually made me want to push further into that direction, which I did. And my friend knew why I wanted to. And those deer disappeared. Like they took off. And so I bring this up because I heard that first, I think, and then I saw it. I got eyes on it, right? But like if I don't have any special ability, but I know how to keep my senses up, my eyes and ears open. And then there's the kind of sixth sense too, which is just like trusting your instincts. If something feels weird or off, I could swear it directs my eyes to certain things. Another example is of that kind of phenomenon. In Marble in the Mountains, there's a hike I've done 3 times that I love because it follows a waterway, a gushing big waterway, all the way up to the area of that sighting, King's Castle, that was videotaped by this Cub Scout troop or special needs group and their counselor many years ago. That was a spot I wanted to get to, and I knew I wasn't going to get there on the Kelsey Trail. I actually got to that spot a different way. But the it's a cliff. The whole walk for miles is just, if you fall, you're not coming back. I mean, it's a deep drop. And there's a bear mother and her cub down there. This was probably, I'd say, if I had to guess, 150 yards away. I always feel very fortunate to see things like that. I did not see it because it was in front of me. In fact, it was tucked all the way down there. I'd say, if I had to estimate, at least 75 feet down, 100 feet down, across the creek on the other side, through some branches and whatnot that, like, okay, we have to walk a little bit so that we have a clearer view of that, right? But like, if I weren't paying attention, I wouldn't have seen that. I'm sure I wouldn't have. I didn't hear them. So it's just, I think it's just a testament to, as I continue to do this, and like I said, I spent my whole years and years and years in the woods, and I don't even consider myself to be some great outdoorsman or survivalist. But I know how to pay attention, and I think that's going to be very important to those who are not lucky enough for kind of Bigfoot to, hey, he just walked in front of me, or she, or whatever, just walked in front of me, and it was an accident. I don't know anything about Bigfoot. I'm just an eyewitness, right? It's like, for those who, I think for those of us who know better, you'll probably miss something if you're not paying attention, because they are better in this respect, and two, because we aren't great at paying attention, right?
No, not at all.
In a 360 way, we are, our perception is very narrow, and our brain is telling us like how narrow that should be the vast majority of the time.
Some questions about Marble Mountain, and to make sure people have the context of what we're talking about. So if you've seen the sighting video of the youth group that is looking up on the ridge, the hill, and they see a really large figure walking around, that's what Rich is talking about, the Marble Mountain area. So Rich, were you actually in that area of that sighting?
Sorry to interrupt. I think that footage is 100% legitimate before
really
that even, I do. Yeah.
So just you think it is 100% legitimate?
Yeah. I just don't know how that could be faked. Now, there are obviously more clear contenders for, is it legit or not? But that's one that I like to think, as a filmmaker and somebody who's studied special effects quite extensively since high school. I can't say like, oh, I've worked in the industry professionally or anything like that, but I have worked at companies that produce movie technologies for the film industry and the music industry. So I am a pro audio and multimedia professional to some degree. I don't have written criteria for like why this is fake or some sort of checklist. It's just something I feel like I innately can spot. And there are some films online where some people believe it's real. I don't think some of these are real. The Marble Mountains footage is one that I do think is legit.
I used to think that it was fake and it was just a dude on top of a mountain, but then I found a whole copy of it and I really watched it. And at the end, there's the part when the figure is walking in the middle of those trees. And you realize how tall those trees are, and you're like, whoa, that figure is really tall. And it just like, it blows your mind.
We've talked about perspective and scale, and that's part of what sells it for me. Is I've been there. I've been to King's Castle. Again, it was on the second or third try, I think. But it is an absolutely gorgeous spot. We were there, I think it was like late April before the snow melted off. So it's like you work your way up and you're in normal seasonal woods or whatever. And it just, as the elevation gains, we start to see some snow. You get to that area, it's like a snow-covered ridge mountain type of thing where it's just like you're in a winter wonderland, and it's just like it's like being on another planet. If you look at the photos on my blog post about that trip, it was really special. I cannot describe the feeling of that spot. It was much more majestic in some ways than the Bluff Creek area. But I bring up sort of being there, not to pat myself on the back, but more to say, when you're looking at that spot, that King's Castle, I didn't go up there. You can hike, and when all the snow is melted off, you can go to that ridge or the peak or whatever. It's high up there. I mean, I don't remember the exact elevation, but like that's not a hill. That is a huge climb up a rock face hill. It's not a hill. Wow. It's not a mountain. It's not a hill. It's just like a gigantic cliff. It's like it looks like a mini Yosemite or something, right? Because again, the video, it kind of looks like, oh, look up on the hill. It's not a hill. It is like a very tall, high elevation area. I think for anybody, for an average sized man to be running around out there as kind of a prank would require an enormous amount of effort and planning. That's the first thing. The second thing is what you observed about just this creature's height, man, creature, whatever you think it is. The trees up there are tall. So it's like you're looking at this figure in the video, as big as it is. I think it'd be hard to spot a human, an average size human on that cliff without the thing being that big, if that makes sense. So again, I'm just going off memory and kind of my own experience.
Sure.
And then you see things like the length of its arms. It's like somebody,
good point,
extending their arms with some sort of costume. Why would they even think to do that? Why is it behaving in such an unusual way where it really does look like it's kind of throwing a fit at some point?
Yeah.
And even the nest, right, that they show in that video, how much time would it take for people to actually make something like that, which to me does not look man-made at all, but rather looks like many other supposedly Bigfoot created nests out there. So again, I can't say with 100% certainty, yep, that was a Bigfoot, but I feel like that footage is legit, and that area still feels like there's the possibility of activity in that area, just because, like I said, there are food sources, the water, there's a lake at that spot. There is a lake. It's a beautiful little lake, but like there's plenty of water up there, and we didn't see a single soul. Again, the 3 times I've hiked that trail, didn't even get to Marble Mountains. Not only that trail, which does have a trailhead, again, very remote, but getting in the back way that we actually got there from, didn't see a single person. Wow. Not one. So it's out there, and the people, one of the sons, I guess, of the dad that filmed that footage and took the youth group out there. I saw a video of him, and I wish I could find it, but like he went back to that spot, and I think it might have actually been with Expedition Bigfoot. He took them out there, and to this day doesn't say like, yeah, that was all big joke or hoax or whatever that my dad pulled. Again, internet, correct me if I'm wrong, if anything more recent has surfaced on that footage. Like I said, I'm not going to go out on a limb and be like, yep, I'm 100% sure it's big. But I believe it. I believe it is. I believe it is based on what I know and what I've seen, where I don't believe every piece of footage. There's a lot of really terrible footage out there that I think
there is.
I've seen on plenty of sort of top 10 lists. I'm like, I'll give you one example, quote 4th of July footage where this alleged Bigfoot is running across a very clear area with a quote baby. I don't buy that footage.
So you don't
That
like
looks
that
like
one?
somebody in a monkey suit, and it probably is. But I don't.
Yeah.
I don't buy that footage for a second.
I'm not sure how I feel about that one yet. I haven't spent enough time on that one. Yeah,
I spent 10 seconds on it.
Yeah, that's all you're gonna do. Okay. Bigfoot footage is so weird, man. It's like, and people really get into it too. But
Yeah.
speaking about like sightings, do you think you've ever been in a situation where you've actually maybe been close to one or have had an encounter of some kind while you've been out?
Yes.
It sounds like you've gone out a lot.
Yes. And I think it was by sheer luck, partially,
Okay.
because I don't operate or act like Cliff Brockman or really really serious. Like this is their life,
Yeah.
right? Like
I
they're
got
going
you,
out there
yeah.
with Bigfoot related gear, plaster Paris, and
Uh-huh.
rulers and all that stuff. I go out with my iPhone and my body and my hiking gear.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you about my experience because it shows you how insane it is that it happened and how it really caught me off guard.
Okay.
I ended up on the way to one of our chosen locations. It might have even been Marble, it was probably Marble Mountains or Willow Creek. On the way, a friend of mine, another friend, not my hiking friend, Bigfoot friend Tom, but it was a guitar teacher, I guess, at the time. He's like, hey, I'm going to be at this campsite and meet me up there. It's on the way. And I was like, cool, we'll make an overnight of that. It wasn't a squatching trip. And the only reason that I agreed to make that stop, the only reason was because I had read about an eyewitness account in a very deep, again, not like as intensely remote as Marble Mountains or Willow Creek, but far out there in Northern California, or pushing your way up there. And I had read an eyewitness account that seemed 100% credible to me because it was written by somebody, excuse me, who was very descriptive about the encounter, but not in a sort of, hey, I'm interested in the topic sort of way. It was just like a guy. He was like, I went hiking one time and I had this crazy experience. Something was growling at me. It was huge. It was following my girlfriend and I was really scared. And I think it was Bigfoot. I've done all this research on Bigfoot since then. So I was very convinced by this obscure eyewitness account, which I love because I scour the internet for such things. And that's why I agreed to go to this campground, because it was a good 15 to 20 minute drive, right, from this site. So this campground is not what I would call touristy. It is, I don't want to say what it is. It was like 20 lots or something like that. And
Sure.
I get awakened by this whooping sound. I'm in my tent. My friend Tom and I are in one tent. The other friend is in another tent. As this whooping starts, my first thought was like, I was annoyed that I was awakened, and I thought it was a drunk camper. That was my very first thought. Not, oh, that's Bigfoot. Good. Yay. Good for me. It was like, who the hell is out there whooping it up when I'm trying to sleep? So as I start to get my senses and wits about me, I realize it's like, I don't know, 5:30 in the morning, something like that.
Okay.
And I always keep my phone by my hand, not for Bigfoot, because I want to see what time it is, if I want to look at it, whatever. And then I check the time, like, wow, it's like, it's not the middle of the night, but it's not dawn either. And I remember my friend was sleeping through this, but this whooping keeps going. And it sounds like exactly, and I didn't know this at the time. Yes, it sounds like other Bigfoot whoops or whatever, but it sounds exactly like the type of whoop that is in David Paulides' Missing 411 documentary, where they talk about the Sierra Sounds and they reenact some of that or whatever. Yeah, and when I heard that, the real whooping, I remember almost jumping out bed and saying, I said to my wife, I was like, that's exactly what I heard. Only I heard it for like 10, 15 minutes. And I heard it with another person. And it just kind of just struck me like, it just struck me like thunder. But the weird part about it, if I'll get back to the actual experience, I was like, that sounds huge. And like I said, I've worked at pro audio companies, more than one. I mix my own music. I'm an audio professional. I'm like, there's no way that's a human being. And I know what coyotes sound like. We have them living on the hills around our house for the last 10 years. I know what various larger wildlife sounds like. This thing sounded like the Hulk. I mean, there's just no way a human could make whoops like that. I don't know why in God's name they would be doing that at that time, at that place. And so as I start to get my senses, I'm like, shut up, like to myself, like I don't want to rustle my sleeping bag. And then my friend starts to rustle around and I didn't want to wake him up, but I wanted him to be quiet so that I could continue hearing this. This is where it gets very weird. I hear something calling back to this thing.
Oh my goodness.
And it sounded smaller and it sounded farther away and it sounded not even as close to a deep voice like this, what I'll call the adult, right? It sounded like kind of like a garbled, kind of like growling, grunting or something back to it. Very faint, very faint. This whooping, however, was not faint. And it was, I can't describe it in any other way except how other eyewitnesses have described it, or audio witnesses. Like it's almost like it cuts through the air. You can almost like feel the sound. Not that it was so close that it was like vibrating in my chest kind of thing. It was more the depth, the power of that sound cut through the night and the words. And like, then my friend wakes up, okay, and he's like, what is that? And I was like, quiet. We keep listening. We're just both dumbstruck by what we're hearing. And it's just like this weird call and response thing going on between the adult and what I think is a juvenile. And then the sun comes up, it's like the crack of dawn. And so my theory is that, and again, I am not going out on a limb enough to say like, that was Bigfoot that night. I will say was the same thing that my friend said. Well, if we're ever going to hear the Bigfoot like that, that was it. Like that was what it sounds like. And that's what it probably was.
Sure.
I have no other scientific worldly explanation for what we heard for a prolonged period. And for somebody like me who knows, I knew vaguely at the time, like, oh, Bigfoots do whooping sounds, right? I've heard a few on the internet, but when I'd say a month or two later, when I watched that Paulides film and heard those particular whoops, I was like, that is exactly what it sounded like, only longer than that. Because those whoops are like, whoop, whoop, like that sort of sound. This was like,
that's increase
good. Thank you. Increase that length by about, I'd say 5. That's how long they were going on. It was like a, but it was that loud and that powerful.
Yeah.
Who the hell would be making that kind of noise where we were, right? And so I walked away just thinking like that was just sheer luck that had a little bit to do with Bigfoot research and my knowledge of the topic. Mm-hmm. And to this day, I'm gonna hold the line of like, I am not that fanciful of a person. I'm scientifically minded. Of course, there's a possibility that some nut job was sitting out there with like enormous speakers for whatever reason. It didn't sound artificial to me. But you never know. Who knows, right? But like, if they were trying to imitate anything, it would have been Bigfoot calls. But like, I don't think that's what was happening. I actually think it's more realistic and plausible that there was a Sasquatch and a juvenile out there. And what makes it even more plausible for me is if you study that area and the terrain, I wouldn't call it a hot spot. It's not a hot spot. It's not an area known for a plethora of activity or anything like that. But we were there during deer season to the point where it was like, on the drive in, you could throw a rock and hit a deer. They're all over the place.
Well, there you
One.
go. Yeah.
Two, it's a major waterway. This campsite is along a major waterway. And so my theory is that they not only have water, it's kind of an inroads to Northern California, possibly migrational, I don't know. And I think they travel along that river. I'm not going to make that assertion. I think my theory is that they travel along that river. They were possibly there on a rare occasion for food. I don't know how they think or what they're doing. They hunt, and I'm sure that they exist, and I believe they do, that they need to eat, whether they're from this dimension or multiple, right? I'm not going to go there. But they need food and water. All researchers know that. And I think they need migration paths or trails that they know are not going to be visible. And so they'll choose waterways, to walk along, whether it's on the bank or in the water. I don't know what they do to that degree, but that's my theory, is that an adult was calling to a juvenile because the sun was coming up. Time to come up. Come on, let's go. We're going to go back to wherever they are going next. I have no idea. It's time to come in because daylight is here. Those howls stopped exactly when the sun started to come up. And that's what kind of, to me, that's what puts some pieces together for my theory of what happened. And I'm not a special person who ever wanted to gain attention from having a Bigfoot experience. I want to see one. I want to have an experience. I'm not going to lie about that. But I'm also not seeking fame and fortune because of some experience or cash in on it, whatever. I actually care much. In fact, I was so blown away by what I was hearing that I didn't even think to record it.
I was like, going to ask you, do you have a regret that you didn't record it with your phone? Yeah.
No, because it was more important to me, and you can call BS. It was more important to me, one, to experience it and hear it, because I wanted to know what was going on, right, and process it. And two, I couldn't wrap my head around it enough to pick up my phone. I literally just was not. People have that, somehow have the presence of mind after 5 seconds of an experience. Oh, I'm gonna pull out my phone. Something weird's going on. I didn't even think to do that, and this was an audio experience, and I didn't even think to get out of my tent because, frankly, I was like, it wasn't because I was afraid. It was more like, I want to hear what's going on. This is a sound thing. I'm not going to find it by going out there, because this thing was,
exactly.
I'd say like not super far, but not super close, but not super far away either. If I had to make an estimate, I would say it was like, it's a 5-minute walk away. I am completely guessing on that.
Right.
But I didn't have the presence of mind to record it. Now I would next time. And again, it's one of those like learning things that I would hope I took up in terms of my experience and presence of mind. Right. But and again, the whole internet can call BS on this. I don't really care. I know what I heard. Nothing will change. Again, it's not about, I assert I heard Bigfoot. It's like, I know what I heard, and I sure as hell think I know what it was. Can I conclusively prove that? No. I wouldn't be able to conclusively prove it if I had recorded it. It'd be another recording in the flotsam and jetsam of evidence and non-evidence, right? So
and there's a ton of that for sure. That's a fascinating story though, Rich. Thank you for sharing that. You've mentioned a few times that you've read a ton of different witness encounters, all different places. What are your top websites to check out witness encounters, or do you have like any that you're like, oh, I'm sure this is not the normal one, it's not like the BFRO, or do you just stick to the like BFRO?
That's a great question. I actually don't read BFRO because I heard that they discount. It's not like I do that on purpose. I have nothing against them. I heard that they discount kind of these more paranormal aspects of the phenomenon.
Sure. Yeah.
And I've also heard from others that they kind of edit that stuff out and tell witnesses like, no, you didn't see blue light, you just saw Bigfoot, and stick to that. And so it's like, if you're going to have a record of such things, then make it like an honest, complete record. So I don't, again, I'm not here to like, I'm sure.
Yeah,
very
it's
nice
just
people.
it's an observation on your part.
It's an observation. So I don't scroll through that stuff. Now I've gone on their website to check out certain accounts in areas that I'm going to visit or I want to visit. Sure.
Oh, yeah.
I'm not, like I said, I'm not anti. I'd say I look at eyewitness accounts on kind of, the Facebook groups as I scroll through. I think there's a Native American run account that I don't remember the name of it. Some of those are fascinating because I feel like it happens more often in those areas and probably with Native Americans because of their history with Sasquatch. I don't have an explanation for that. There's some sort of connection or tie there that I've talked to some of my guests, and I know that they believe, and they've overtly said that there is a connection there that we don't know everything about. I find it fascinating, and I think someday more might be revealed about that. And I don't mean to be a conspiracy theorist, but I'm sorry, I didn't mean to get off topic. What was the original question?
No, that you did answer it. I was trying to get and see if you had any secret spots for Bigfoot encounter. You answered
encounters, yeah. Facebook groups. There's a site I like. It's actually more, I discovered it on Twitter, Sasquatch Chronicles or Encounters, something like that.
The Bigfoot encounters.
Just, I think so.
That one's great. It's an older one by Bobby Short. That one's great though.
I think that's the one I'm talking about. But I like how he clearly just reprints the things that people send in, and these people, I have a very high, I feel like a very good, I also have experience in police research for screenplays, and that's always been another kind of interest of mine is forensic psychology and criminology, right? So I'm not a cop like David or a law enforcement professional, but I know that world, and I know I have a good BS meter. And I think that applies to both video stuff and stuff in writing. And I think that there's enough people that supply these encounters where they have absolutely nothing to gain. They're submitted anonymously. I can tell that by reading some of them, they're terrified in some cases. Others, it's more wonderment, I guess, or sort of curiosity. There's also common threads of just like, I want to know more about this topic because they've had this experience, or they're recounting something very often from years and years ago or their childhoods that they're like, I've been too embarrassed to talk about this for 40 years, but now I'm going to share that experience. So again, there are a lot of things that lend credibility to certain eyewitness testimony. Like, is this person credible? The context around it, all that stuff. But yeah, there's plenty of good sites out there. I think I named two of them where these things come up. Obviously, like shows like Expedition Bigfoot's done an amazing job of interviewing eyewitnesses, and I appreciate that they do that. Actually, that should be part of these kinds of shows. I know Finding Bigfoot has done that in the past. So I wouldn't say like, oh, I have these go-to places. It's more sites that I like. One last one. There was a website that was pretty active called Sasquatch Encounters or Sasquatch Believers or something like that. It was like completely dedicated to, at one time, I think it was dedicated to like just written accounts that were anonymously sent in. And I remember that a lot of really good accounts being on that site. It's kind of migrated more to like a content marketing type of site with a lot of ads and sort of peripheral Bigfoot content. Yeah, but I liked it most several years ago when it was just like, stick to the eyewitnesses, because to me, that's always that anecdotal evidence is evidence, whether scientists want to discount that or not. Like people in academia, who deserve, they're scientists. That's their job, is to be skeptics first, right? But like, that anecdotal eyewitness evidence, you can convict people in a court of law in testimony like that. But like, we've got hundreds of thousands over since the dawn of recorded history of these eyewitness accounts. So unless there's some sort of collective mass psychosis going on,
Yeah.
I would think that the ones that are submitted anonymously in particular, you know, there's something behind that. So I'm getting into this realm of kind of like, is it real or not, or credibility? But like, I'm talking about eyewitness credibility and the importance of those kinds of testimonials. They're a huge body of evidence. They're almost like more important to me than physical evidence like footprints and hair. I know that scientists, like that's like top dog. That's as good as it gets, even for somebody like Russ. Like Russ has said to me, I want hair. I want, DNA. I want footprint, because then I know what I saw right in front of me, which looks like a Bigfoot. Even on the show, they aired some footage that Russ got through a scope. Then I know it's a Bigfoot. It's like, for me, it's like, well, I take everybody's word for it. Any eyewitness testimony, that must be true. That's not where I sit. I just think that, like, that to me will almost be more compelling, is that body of evidence that just continues to grow over and over and over again every day, and will never stop. It's never gone away. Why are all these people coming forward talking about these experiences? And here's the other thing. We talked about kind of my childhood through adulthood and how I followed this topic from childhood to adulthood. Like, I'm sure, like many of the other people I've interviewed or researched. And that's not the case with many of those folks, by the way. I call myself an aggregator, where it's like, I've aggregated all of those eyewitness testimonies and, videos by this Facebook group of their behavior and stuff like that. Like, there's patterns there. There are very strong patterns there that we know, researchers at various levels, like, we recognize in the community. And here's the thing: since the advent of the internet, more videos are going up, right? More stories are coming through, and we're seeing more of those patterns strengthen, and they get weirder. Like the high strangeness, we see patterns in the high strangeness patterns that I started to become much more aware of when the internet became a thing, and people like Mike Patterson started a YouTube video channel. I interviewed him, by the way, on my channel, but like, that's why I started hearing about like gifting marbles, and I guess like eyewitness, you call them experiencers or repeat experiencers, gift giving in the form of these little intertwined stick figures, and what do you call it? Tree structures. These are things that, like, we didn't know about those in childhood, but yet people like me and probably you have aggregated these patterns over time. So this list of sort of Bigfoot related phenomenon not only gets weirder, but those patterns get more extensive, right? And they build far out above and beyond this kind of lost, undiscovered creature in the woods. I think there's more to the Bigfoot phenomenon than that. In this growing list of anecdotal evidence, it's not physical evidence. It's adding to that belief collectively, I think, if not across the community, but like collectively, that anecdotal evidence is extremely clear, that there are some very weird things associated with Bigfoot, above and beyond the giant hairy creatures roaming around the forests of North America and other corners of the world. So they can't be they serve a very, very important purpose, in my opinion.
That's very interesting. Are there plans to come out with, are you planning to do more interviews on your YouTube channel? I'm just curious.
I was taking a break because of the holidays, and it's like, between some of my other extracurricular activities like music, screenwriting, on top of having a family, all that other stuff. It's like
Right.
I have to be careful. I have to be careful about how I, spend time and do these sorts of things. So I would consider that kind of like this hot batch of interviews that I wanted to do of the people that I wanted to talk to the most. And so I feel very fortunate, the people that were kind of like, hey, these people are at the top of my list or whatever. Like, I got to talk to all of them. That was like a thrill for me. And also, I was super hungry at that time, to kind of like, again, fortify my knowledge, learn more, and engage more with the community in this topic, I guess, because that's been nothing but rewarding. It's not really because like I'm a Bigfoot nerd and I want to go to conventions and rub shoulders with people all the time. That's
Right.
not really nothing. No offense if that's your thing. That's not
Yeah.
really my interest. It's like I said, I want to see one. I want to learn more about the mystery. I want to uncrack the mystery
Totally
and
get it.
understand what's going on, because it's I think once we do, and I always believe that we will at some point, it will alter humanity as we know it.
Everything. I agree with you 100%. It'll all change 100%. Yep.
And who knows if things will remain timeless as they have been, right? Or it's like my song is a bit tongue in cheek, but one of the lines is something like, they've been around since time or something. I should know my own song. But how long has this phenomenon been around? Since cave paintings,
Yeah.
right? And to this day, there's something we don't understand and that we cannot control with this phenomenon, because otherwise we would know what we need to know about it. I do think that the government knows much more than we know publicly about this topic.
Absolutely.
But I don't believe that they have full understanding of what I guess they can do, what they do, why they do it, why they're here, what they are, all that stuff. All these things that we don't understand. I don't even know. I would doubt that the government really knows everything, because I think they're going to hide things that they actually don't understand it, because it's like, we can't control it. We know it's a thing for sure. That's classified. We know it's a thing, but we can't control it. We don't know exactly what it is or why they're here or what they're doing, but just don't talk about it because we can't control it, and it will disrupt
wild, dude.
the machine.
Yeah, exactly. And man, you can go a lot of different ways with that one. And I agree with you. Something is going. I believe the government is definitely involved somehow, but I want to make sure that we touch upon a few things before the end of our time together. One is, we're going to play your song at the end of the interview. So listeners, at the end of this interview, after the normal outro, stick around, because I'm going to be playing Rich's song, which is titled Bigfoot's an Alien. And Rich's music is awesome. It reminds me of classic 90s music that I still like to jam out to today. But what is the song about, or sorry, what's the story behind Bigfoot's an Alien? Where were you in your life when you wrote that song? There's got to be a story behind it.
Well, thank you for that setup. First of all, I appreciate it. Yeah, it's a cool story behind that song. I had actually been working on a novel for something like 5-6 years.
Oh, wow.
And I've been a musician since I was 13. I was most intensely involved in running a band and all that in my early and mid 20s. And I had run a band on the West Coast, both the East Coast and the West Coast. And I was taking a break from music to work on this novel. And I hadn't written a song, touched my guitar in something in like those 6 years. It was very dormant for me musically during that time. And once I finished that book project, I picked up guitar again, and it was like that song. It's like, I won't say it wrote itself or some magical experience, but
Sure.
it was really like this kind of pent up lifetime of the Bigfoot interest, and then also a volcano, I guess, from within on the musical front, because it did, like, it came together really quickly, and I was like, I just want to record this in a professional studio versus me recording it myself and producing it, mixing it myself, which is what I've been doing for the last 6-7 years, and even before that, in my all throughout my 20s and 30s. That's my default thing, is to record my own stuff, produce it. But I was like, I just want to have fun. I know it's a good song. I just want to have fun and have a professional help me out and make it sound awesome and super heavy. That was important to me, right? And so I worked with this producer. I want to name drop because he's really great at what he does. Scott Lamas. He's in San Rafael, California, our hometown here in Marin County. And then the song, I wish I could say, yeah, then it got me a record deal and all this other stuff. But like it got attention and enough without me trying at all. Like I literally was like, I'm going to put this on my Bandcamp page. I had no, like, oh, this is going to be number one with a bullet, and I'll finally get that record deal. It was like, I'm going to put it out there. But like, it got a really good response and got picked up by kind of like the power pop crowd and like people that did like 90s rock kind of music.
Oh yeah.
To the point, and I was sufficiently encouraged where I was like, I'm going to do a whole album, and I haven't done a whole album in a long time, and I haven't really done like a bona fide solo album with my name. Like I've always run a band with a name. Mm-hmm. So I did an album, and I put that online, and it just kind of like got me into this whole power pop internet community, I guess. So, I'm by no means a household name, but I'm certainly, I have a platform, if you will, a niche platform with people that appreciate such music. And so that song always has this kind of special place in my heart. Is not only one of my favorites, but like it is from the heart. And I believe in what it's saying. Not literally like, oh, Bigfoot's an alien, because that's up for debate. It's more, we don't know what the heck this is, and it's been around forever, and it will blow our minds if we ever really knew what is going on. And the more I talk to people like Dr. Simeon Hine, PhD, author of Dark Matter's Monsters, my interview with him is on my YouTube channel. But the more I talk to people like him and other experiencers start talking about their experience and are kind of like plugged into this in different ways, the more I believe in. I'm with Ron Moorhead. I became of that belief. I think like after I started to aggregate, like I said, some of these phenomenon in the eyewitness accounts, people like Mike Patterson coming forward, it just started to like creep into, geez, maybe there's something to this whole like weird wave of sightings in the 70s that are well documented and that hundreds of people were part of, including law enforcement.
All over the
place. Maybe there's something to eyewitness accounts in the infinite amount of Bigfoot being associated with UFO sightings. I don't know if Bigfoot's an alien, but like, what the hell's going on, right? You have to ask him. You have to be open-minded enough, like Tesla, like Einstein, to ask yourself these questions. Otherwise, you're actually doing a disservice, I think, to scientific inquiry. If you're not, no. Do I believe in leprechauns? No. Do I believe in fairies? No, I do not. Do I believe in something where hundreds of thousands of people have had encounters with over time, eons? Right. Yes, right. I do. I do think there's something there. I'm not even counting my own possible experience, right? It's like, I've always been a believer since adulthood because I'm a reasonable adult. But now I've become more of a believer in, we just don't understand what this is about. It's not, I don't think it's about tracking a bear. And I know that there are well-known people in the community that still do cling to that and think that's what they're pursuing. And I don't fall into that camp. I think there's something much more complex that we understand theoretically on a quantum level, as Ron Moorhead would say, who is light years ahead of me in terms of deep dive understanding of his theoretical understanding of what's going on, backed by much firsthand experience, I might add. Talk about close encounters of the first, second, and third kind. Ron's had all of them, but I think that he has the kind of mind and he's open-minded enough to really, like, him and Ronnie and Simeon, people like that, I feel like are pushing the edge of what we're dealing with here. Filmmakers like Brett Eichenberger. If you haven't seen The Flash of Beauty, I think it's the best documentary I've ever seen. I mean, I've seen it twice. I want to see it again. It's so good. It's extremely well crafted, but it's also, it takes us to the present day, right? In a way that nostalgia doesn't, or Finding Bigfoot even, or, you know, much of the multimedia out there, like Brett is on what I consider to be like the cutting edge of what's going on and talking to people who are on the cutting edge. I'd like to talk to Brett again, actually, because he's a great guy, and I think he's doing some amazing work, and I have immense respect for him as a filmmaker, let alone somebody who's involved in this topic and presenting it in such a accessible, responsible, and thorough, holistic way.
Absolutely. Yeah, I can't wait for the sequel to come out on that. There's another side project you've got going on that I want to make sure that we cover, just because the things that you've come out so far on it have been just awesome. Creature Portal, tell me about how, and that's your it's a clothing line, but it's, if you're into Bigfoot, you're gonna love it. So tell me how that came about, and all the good stuff about Creature Portal.
That is an interesting story that came up around the time I started the YouTube interview series, but it was really coincidental. It wasn't like, you know, when I do the YouTube stuff, I'm like, you can support me in one of two ways. You can visit creatureportal.com and get a Bigfoot t-shirt that I've designed and illustrated, or hoodie, or some other things I'm offering, or you can buy my music on Bandcamp, right? I didn't start Creature Portal to support the YouTube channel or vice versa. It was really like, my kids are 7 and 10, and I happened to draw a Bigfoot that I liked in a manner that I liked. And I've been sketching Bigfoot since childhood. And I was like, I want to make a t-shirt out of that. And then today I just researched some platforms that you could do print on demand kind of things like this. And that's how it was born. It wasn't like, hey, I want to, I would love to have more time to really commit to it as kind of a business. For me, it's really like, this is a fun thing. It's something that I can scale up over time. Potentially, I'd like to actually do more paranormal creatures like Mothman. I did a Wolfman or Dogman.
Yeah, it's cool.
So it's like it's just like something that feeds my interest in this topic, but it's also an outlet for my illustration. It's a way to support, you know, my work. But that's how it really came about. It was like one of those things that started very organically and not sort of like deliberately, like, how can I monetize this? Or I'm going to sit down and start a t-shirt company. It was like totally fun thing that had to do with my weird Bigfoot stuff. And, oh, cool, I'm talking to these people. Maybe I can use my t-shirt to, you know, as a means of support for that stuff. I think I sold a few to my friends, but I would hardly say it's taken off or anything like that. But hey, if you want to check it out, check it out. I know you're not showing this on your YouTube channel, but here's the OG design.
It is so cool. It's one of my favorite renditions right now of Bigfoot. It is such a cool illustration, dude.
Thank you. I
love
appreciate that. That's what made me want to do the t-shirt. I was like, I really liked how it turned out. And I'm
Mhm.
even if I weren't the artist on it, I would say like it would catch my eye. It looks like what I would think a Bigfoot would look like, if that makes sense. But it was like I told you about how the song kind of prompted more creativity in that area. And it's
Right.
similar to this. It's kind of like, oh, that turned out cool. I'm going to do another one. And then I'd done like 3. I did a custom one for my son. I want to keep going and just kind of get the community who's interested in cryptids and Bigfoot and things like that. Kind of like, hey, if you have a custom design, tell me. And I see trends there. I'll do it. Now I'm not going to do a custom design for every person on the internet or anybody that reaches out, but it's kind of like if I start seeing a bunch of like, man, I want a Mothman t-shirt. Cool. I'll do that.
Or like the squonk.
Yeah.
The squonk from Pennsylvania. You know about the squonk. You're a Pennsylvania boy.
The Birdman, right?
Yeah.
Chupacabra. I mean, it's like, I wouldn't say it's a huge list, but it's long enough that like with my kids being into monsters, and I like them to watch me create and draw and share those experiences with them. My kids wear that stuff because not because I don't force them to, but they like it, and it's like, it's fun for them. It's fun for me. And so that's the story behind Creature Portal. Visit
I love it.
.com and check it out. Buy yourself a t-shirt. It will help support their college funds. And my day to day, we've all got bills and working in advertising. I'm not ashamed to merge art and commerce and my interest for sure. So,
but listeners, I'm really not just saying this. Like, it is an absolutely awesome illustration. So like, go to the show notes, click the link for Creature Portal, and check it out. And if you like it, buy one. So it's really good. Before we end out, before we reach the end here, I am genuinely curious. So you have 2 blog posts. Your blog posts are really good. The one about Marble Mountain, the one about Bluff Creek. But you said you've been going out for a long time. Have you gone to other Bigfoot sites then? Besides those 2 places, those 2
are the 2 most well known, and I've made repeated trips to them because they're kind of something I can accomplish in like a 4-day excursion with my buddy.
Gotcha.
Versus like I have to fly there and all that other stuff. I'm trying to think if, like I said, I've been to Chestnut Ridge in Pennsylvania, in Western Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think if there are any other specifics, and I can't offhand. I probably taken trips to other spots. I know there's been activity in the Felton, Santa Cruz area, and I can't say like, oh, we went to this exact location because it happened here, blah, blah, blah. But we've been to places where there have been encounters.
Interesting.
A couple weird things happened on that trip, actually. Now that I think about it, I found a giant bone of a spine. It looked like cattle or something. I mean, it was huge. Weird. In the middle of the trail. Bone just white as a pearl with some black spots or whatever. But like, why is that there in a national park, and not a national park, by the way? But and I'm not saying like, oh, that's squatchy or that was, but just, you find weird things happen in the woods like that. But that area, Felton, there's a Bigfoot museum run by this older gentleman who we met in person. I don't remember his name offhand. He's met David Paulides, and we were talking about
Mike Rugg.
Thank you.
Mike Rugg. I want to talk to him, but he is definitely. I have to look into it, but that place looks fantastic. Have you ever watched his YouTube channel?
No, I have not. I didn't even know he had one.
Dude, he's got a YouTube channel from 13 years ago, and it's got like David Paulides stuff on it from when he
Wow.
presented at the museum, but it's also like Mike back in the day being interviewed for 2-3 minutes at a time, and no one knows about it. And it's like he's answering Bigfoot questions to this guy. It's so good, dude. Oh,
That's awesome. I
you
have
got
to
to check it
it
out. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
But
And I'm glad
Mike
you
Rugg is a cool
remember his
dude.
name. Yeah, I
Yeah.
saw like last year that he was trying to save the museum, or it was
Yeah.
it was almost burned or something. I don't know what's going on
Mhm.
with it today, but like that was an awesome, cool experience. Just like stopping in and like, oh wow, it's open. That's cool, and he's actually here. That's cool. We weren't looking for him, by the way. We just wanted to visit the museum, but we had a.
Oh, cool.
He was very gracious. We had a nice chat, and one of his books had a alien face on it by John Marks, who was a well-known. I'm sorry, John Mack, who was a very well-known alien abduction researcher, and that actually prompted my screenplay on alien abductions and that topic.
Really?
The
Oh,
hybrid,
wow.
yes.
That is cool.
It just set me off on a whole 8 months to a year's worth of research and writing on that topic. It actually, us even talking about that just kind of prompted that another kind of corner of paranormal interest, like blown wider open than before, all because of that book staring me right in front of the face. It was like a sign or something. It was interesting.
Wow. That's wild. Rich, this has been an awesome interview. Thank you so much for coming on and just chatting about all the crazy Bigfoot adventures you've had so far. I'm sure you're going to have way more. I'm definitely going to keep an eye on what you put out on your blog in the future, all that good stuff. Do you mind spending a few minutes sharing with listeners, please, anything you want to plug, go right ahead.
Oh,
Now
thank you so much.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, yeah, I want to say huge thanks for having me. I'm glad that you reached out. I thought this was a really great conversation, interview or not. It was, some great questions, and I just appreciate the time and the platform to talk about my experience and hear, just be part of the community. In terms of things to mention, same sort of spiel at the end of my YouTube videos or beginning in some cases, but just if you want to support my work and just kind of like contribute in any sort of way, more importantly, just kind of like connect. I love as an artist and creative person just to connect with people. Check out Creature Portal, get yourself a shirt, gift it to the Bigfoot lover in your life. It's available in multiple colors for kids, adults, and women even. Because I know that there are female squatchers out there too. I know it's like Star Wars. Dude. It's a very male-centric community, but and then on the other side, the music side, visit my website richardturgeon.com and consider supporting my music. It's everywhere. It's on iTunes under my name, Spotify, iTunes, Amazon, all that stuff. But if you get it on Bandcamp, the most proceeds go to indie artists like myself.
Okay.
And I love to share my music with as many people as possible. If you go to the website, you'll see reviews for the records, and I've been doing it for a long time. And anybody that just gives my music a try, it's like that's a big honor. In connecting with a new listener, just getting the occasional email from, hey, I heard your music on Bob Seska's podcast the other day, or whatever it is, or this one. That's awesome. So check that stuff out. And again, just appreciate anybody who's listened to this. Feel free to reach out to me on the YouTube channel, and definitely check out the Bigfoot interview series, as I call it. There's a playlist called Bigfoot, and that's got guests that include Ron Moorhead, Russ Accord from Expedition Bigfoot, or Accord, excuse me, Dr. Simeon Hine, author of Dark Matter Monsters, Mike Patterson, a Bigfoot experiencer, Brett Eichenberger, the director that I mentioned, director of Flash of Beauty. I'm trying to think of, I hate to forget anybody on that. Oh, Mike Freeman, of course.
Paul 62,000 views.
64.
Or whatever. Yeah.
Right. and just both of us were absolutely stunned. And that we didn't even get to that. And I don't want to prolong our time. But like another one of those, like, I'd like to know more about that guy, Paul Freeman, that shot that footage. Like, what was his story? And it just ended up with me connecting with Mike in that video, and more people watching it than either one of us could have possibly imagined. So, yeah, just check that out too, because these are some great people, and I think there's a lot to learn from. You can play YouTube videos in your car on your commute. I like to do that. It's very calming. And these interviews, you know, they're around the hour and 15 mark, probably like this one. And they're fascinating. I want to go back, honestly, and listen to all of them myself, even though I was the one doing the interviewing. I actually just want to sit back as a listener and check them all out. So I think, hey, if you don't want to check out sort of my creative commercial endeavors, like, listen to what these people have to say and just keep being curious and keep your sense of mystery and wonder about the universe, I would say.
Exactly. Yeah. If you listen to this podcast, you should 100% be subscribed to Rich's YouTube channel and check out those interviews, because it's like, you're going to love, if you like this, you're going to love that. So yeah, but Rich, thank you so much for coming on. I'm sure we'll be connecting in the future, and you have a great rest of your night, man.
Thank you, Jeremiah. I appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to Bigfoot Society. If you like the show, please review and rate it 5 stars on iTunes. Hit the share button and send this episode to all your friends on social media. Subscribe to Bigfoot Society wherever you listen to podcasts. It doesn't cost a thing. Pick up a Bigfoot Society shirt or enamel pin over on our Etsy page, and people will tell you all about their Bigfoot sightings when you wear it. At least that's what people tell us. That's what happens. If you'd like to become an official member of Bigfoot Society with a membership card, a community of like-minded individuals, and extra content each month, then please consider becoming a supporter of the podcast by going to www.patreon.com/The Bigfoot Society. Thanks for listening.